The last pan I bought was in the spring of 2010. I remember it clearly because I was pregnant with my youngest and tired of throwing money at a problem I didn't understand. That was 14 years ago. Every pan I own today still works. None of them stick. Not the cast iron my mother-in-law Opal handed me when I first moved to this farm. Not the stainless steel I picked up at a church rummage sale for $3. Not the one carbon steel skillet I treated myself to on my 49th birthday. I'm not special. I didn't go to culinary school. I don't have a single expensive pan with a fancy name on the bottom. What I have is a mother-in-law who grew up during the Depression, when throwing away a pan was simply not an option. Opal is 87 years old now. She still cooks every morning. She still has the same cast iron she's been using since 1962. And about 14 years ago, she sat me down at this very kitchen table and explained, plainly and without ceremony, why my pans were failing me. What she told me that afternoon changed the way I cook. Everything I'm about to share with you comes from that conversation, from 14 years of putting it into practice, and from understanding the actual science behind why it works. Because knowing the why is what keeps you from making the same mistakes again. Let's start with the real reason your pans start to stick. Because most people blame the pan. It's not the pan's fault. It's almost never the pan's fault. When you put a pan on high heat before adding oil, the metal expands rapidly and unevenly. Every pan, stainless steel, cast iron, carbon steel, even well-made non-stick, has microscopic pores on its cooking surface. Those pores open when the pan gets hot. If your food hits that pan before oil has coated those pores, food proteins and starches slide right into them and bond with the metal. That's what sticking is. It's food bonding to exposed metal in tiny crevices that should have been sealed with fat. The fix is simple. Always heat the pan first, add oil second, and add food only when the oil shimmers. That sequence matters every single time. Thermal shock does the same kind of damage, but it works in the opposite direction. You take a screaming hot pan and run it under cold water to clean it. The metal contracts violently. Over time, this warps the base of the pan. A warped pan sits unevenly on your burner. That means uneven heat, which means some spots are too hot and some spots are not hot enough, which means food sticks in the hot spots and sits raw in the cool ones. Opal never once ran a hot pan under cold water, not in 60 years. I've watched her. She sets it on a folded dish towel and lets it come down on its own, every single time. It costs nothing, it takes maybe 10 minutes of patience, and it saves the pan for another decade. Then there's what dish soap does to a seasoned surface, and this is where I'm going to slow down because this one matters a lot. Cast iron and carbon steel both rely on a layer of polymerized oil, people call it seasoning, that sits on top of the metal and acts like a natural non-stick coating. Modern dish soap contains surfactants specifically designed to cut through oil and fat. Every time you scrub a cast iron or carbon steel pan with dish soap and a sponge, you're removing the very layer that prevents sticking. Then you wonder why your eggs stick. I wondered the same thing for years before Opal explained it. She told me Opal's grandmother had never once touched her cast iron with soap in her entire life. It wasn't a rule she'd been given. It was just common sense when you understood what seasoning was and what it did. For stainless steel, the problem is slightly different, but equally destructive. Stainless steel doesn't have a seasoning layer. It relies on heat management and a thin oil film to create a non-stick effect. When you soak stainless steel or scrub it with abrasive cleaners and rough sponges, you're creating micro scratches in the surface. Food catches in those scratches. Every bad cleaning strips more material away and creates more places for food to grab. Within a year of misuse, a perfectly good stainless steel pan can become nearly unusable. I know this because I did it to my first stainless pan before Opal set me straight. So now let's talk about what Opal actually showed me. The first thing she taught me was the baking soda and vinegar reset for stainless steel. And I want to be specific here because generic advice doesn't help anyone. If your stainless steel pan has brown or gray discoloration, that film that builds up over time and makes the surface feel slightly rough, that's oxidized oil residue and mineral deposits from water. It's not rust, it's not damage, it's just buildup. And a hot acidic solution combined with gentle abrasion from baking soda cuts right through it without scratching the surface. Here's the exact process. Fill the pan with just enough water to cover the bottom by about ½ inch. Add 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. Bring that to a simmer on the stove, not a boil, just a gentle simmer with small bubbles rising slowly. Let it go for about 3 to 4 minutes. That acidic hot water loosens mineral deposits and lifts oxidized residue from the surface. Take the pan off the heat. Pour out the water carefully. While the pan is still warm, not hot, just warm enough to touch without burning, sprinkle a thin layer of baking soda directly onto the surface. Use a soft cloth or a non-abrasive sponge and work in small circular motions. The baking soda is mildly abrasive enough to polish without scratching the steel. You'll see the cloth picking up a grayish residue. That's the buildup coming off. Keep going until the motion feels smooth and clean. Rinse with warm water. Dry immediately and completely with a clean towel. That's it. Opal does this about twice a year on her stainless pots. I do it whenever I notice the surface starting to feel dull or tacky after washing. After you do this, the surface almost looks new, and more importantly, it behaves better. Food releases more cleanly because there's no residue layer creating uneven heat distribution across the cooking surface. Now let's talk about cast iron, because this is where most people either give up or get it wrong. Opal has never given up on a single piece of cast iron in her life. She has re-seasoned pieces that look like they came out of a barn fire. I've watched her do it. I've done it myself with a rusted skillet I found at an estate sale that the family was going to throw in the trash. Re-seasoning cast iron is not complicated, but it requires patience and the right oil. I'm going to tell you to use flaxseed oil, and I'm going to explain exactly why. Flaxseed oil is exceptionally high in alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid. That chemical structure makes it especially reactive to oxygen and heat. When you heat flaxseed oil past its smoke point in thin layers, it oxidizes and polymerizes more completely than most other oils. What polymerization means in plain terms is that the oil transforms from a liquid fat into a hard, durable, plastic-like solid that bonds tightly to the iron at the molecular level. The result is a harder, more durable layer of seasoning than you'd get from vegetable shortening or canola oil. Here's the full process. Start by washing the pan thoroughly with hot water and a small amount of dish soap. Yes, soap at this stage because you're stripping everything off and starting completely fresh. Rinse it well. Now put it on the stove over medium heat or in a 300-degree oven and let it dry completely. I mean bone dry. Any moisture left in the pan will turn to steam during seasoning and create bubbles in your coating. Those bubbles are weak spots that chip away under use. Once the pan is completely dry and still warm, apply a very thin layer of flaxseed oil with a clean cloth or paper towel. Cover the entire surface, inside, outside, the handle, all of it. Now here's the part most people get wrong. Wipe almost all of it off. The layer you want is thinner than you think. If the pan looks shiny and wet with oil, you've used too much. Too thick a layer of oil doesn't polymerize evenly. It bakes into sticky, gummy patches that flake off instead of forming a hard, smooth coat. Wipe it down until the pan barely looks oiled at all. It should look matte, not glossy. Put the pan upside down in an oven preheated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Put a sheet of foil on the rack below to catch any drips. Bake it for 1 full hour. Turn the oven off. Leave the pan inside until the oven is completely cool. This typically takes about 2 hours. Do not open the door. Do not rush this. The slow cooling is part of the process. It lets the polymerized layer set fully before the metal contracts, which prevents cracking in the coating. Do this whole process 4 to 6 times total, back-to-back sessions, one right after another over the course of a single day or 2 days. Each thin layer adds to the last. After 4 to 6 rounds, you'll have a seasoning that is genuinely durable and genuinely dark. I did this with a pan that had rusted through in spots. I soaked it in a solution of equal parts water and white vinegar for 30 minutes to loosen the rust, scrubbed it clean, dried it completely, and then did 6 rounds of flaxseed oil seasoning. That pan is still in my kitchen today, cooking eggs without a drop of sticking. Now I want to talk about non-stick pans because not everyone is ready to switch to cast iron or carbon steel, and I understand that completely. Most people have at least one non-stick pan in the house. Most of them fail for exactly 2 reasons, and both reasons are entirely preventable. The first reason is metal utensils. The non-stick coating on a conventional non-stick pan, PTFE, which most people know by the brand name Teflon, is a soft polymer layer bonded to the metal base. It is not hard. It is not scratch resistant. Metal spatulas, metal whisks, metal spoons, anything with a hard metal edge cuts through that coating on contact. You might not see the damage right away, but you're creating invisible scratches in that polymer layer with every single use of a metal utensil. Over weeks and months, those scratches deepen. Food catches in them. Eventually, the coating starts to flake. When that happens, the pan is done and you cannot fix it. So use wooden or silicone utensils only, from the very first use. That's not optional if you want the pan to last. The second reason nonstick pans fail is high heat. PTFE coatings begin to degrade at temperatures above approximately 500 degrees Fahrenheit. That sounds high, and it is, in theory, but here's the practical problem. A dry pan sitting on a high burner without anything in it can reach 700 degrees Fahrenheit in under 2 minutes. At that temperature, the coating doesn't just scratch, it chemically breaks down. It becomes brittle, flakes more easily, and releases compounds from the coating that you absolutely do not want near your food or your lungs. The solution is straightforward. Never preheat a nonstick pan without oil or food already in it. Never cook on high heat in a nonstick pan. Keep it at medium heat at the absolute highest. Medium-low is better. Nonstick pans are not designed for searing. They're designed for eggs, pancakes, delicate fish. Use them for what they were made for. But what if your nonstick pan is already past the point of good cooking? What if it's sticking badly and you can't afford to replace it right now? Opal had something to say about this too. She didn't believe in wasting anything if a little effort could buy it more useful time. Here's how to temporarily revive a nonstick pan that's gone bad. Heat the pan over medium-low heat until it's just warm. Remove it from the burner. Rub the interior with a very thin coat of vegetable oil or coconut oil using a paper towel, working in gentle circular motions. Let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes off the heat. Wipe away any excess with a clean part of the towel. This won't restore the coating. Nothing will restore a chemically degraded or physically scratched non-stick coating. But what it does is temporarily fill in some of the microscopic grooves and scratches with oil, reducing friction enough to make the pan usable for a while longer. You'll need to repeat this every few uses as the oil cooks off. It's a workaround, not a cure, but it can buy you several more weeks of service while you save for something better. And Opal would say that's always worth doing before you give up and spend money you don't need to spend yet. When you are ready to invest in a pan that will genuinely last, I want to tell you what to actually buy. The pan industry has a significant financial interest in you replacing your cookware every 2 or 3 years. Most non-stick pan packaging will suggest replacement every 1 to 2 years for best performance. That is a sales statement, not a safety requirement. It is written by people who profit when you buy more pans. 2 categories of cookware will outlast you if you treat them right: cast iron and carbon steel. That's it. No specific brand names needed, because the material and your care of it matter far more than the name on the handle. A cast iron skillet bought at a thrift store for $4, properly restored and seasoned, can outperform a $200 nonstick pan by decades. Opal's cast iron is 62 years old. It cooks eggs without sticking every single morning. Cast iron is heavy, holds heat exceptionally well, and can go from stovetop to a 500-degree oven without any issue at all. It takes longer to heat up than thinner pans, but once it's hot, it holds that heat evenly and consistently across the entire surface. That even heat is what makes food release cleanly. Carbon steel is lighter than cast iron, heats up faster and responds more immediately to heat changes, and is the preferred pan in professional restaurant kitchens worldwide, precisely because it lasts. Both materials require the same kind of seasoning and care I described. Both will reward that care with decades of reliable performance. If you're buying cast iron, look at the surface texture. Vintage cast iron is typically machine smooth after casting. Modern production cast iron often has a slightly rough, pebbly surface from the casting mold itself. The smooth surface is significantly better for cooking because there are fewer places for food to catch. You can find smooth vintage cast iron at estate sales, flea markets, and thrift stores for very little money. You can also buy modern cast iron and spend time sanding the interior surface with 60 grit sandpaper, followed by 120 grit to smooth it out. It's a project, but some people find it worthwhile, especially if they want new cast iron at a low price. If you're buying carbon steel, look for a pan that's at least 3 millimeters thick. Thinner carbon steel warps under high heat, especially on gas burners with concentrated heat under a small area. 3 millimeters and above stays flat through years of use. Now I'm going to tell you the one cleaning rule Opal gave me that changed everything about how I treat my pans. It sounds almost too simple when I say it out loud. I dismissed it the first time she said it. I've never dismissed it since. Hot pan, cold water never. Cool pan, warm water always. That's the rule. 7 words. But let me tell you what she actually meant by it, because the practice goes deeper than a simple phrase. After you finish cooking, take the pan off the heat and set it somewhere safe, on a trivet, on a folded cloth, on a cool burner with the heat off. Let it sit, not for a long time, just long enough that you can hold your palm an inch above the cooking surface for 3 full seconds without pulling your hand away. That's your signal. The pan is ready to clean. Fill it with warm water, not cold, not boiling, just warm from the tap. For cast iron and carbon steel, use no soap. A stiff bristle brush or a chainmail scrubber loosens cooked-on food without stripping seasoning. For stubborn bits in a cast iron, add a tablespoon of coarse kosher salt and a splash of warm water, then scrub with a folded paper towel. The salt acts as a gentle abrasive that cleans without touching the seasoning layer underneath. Rinse with warm water. For stainless steel, a small amount of dish soap is fine. Use a soft cloth or non-abrasive sponge and rinse completely. Then, and this part is non-negotiable no matter what pan you're cleaning, dry it immediately and completely. Not air dry. Not set it in the dish rack for an hour. Dry it by hand with a clean towel right now while you're still standing at the sink. Every drop of water left on cast iron or carbon steel starts working toward rust within hours in a humid kitchen. Every drop of water left in stainless steel leaves a mineral deposit that builds up over time. Dry it now. After drying cast iron or carbon steel, put the pan back on a low burner for 60 seconds. You'll see the last traces of moisture evaporate. While it's still warm, apply the thinnest possible wipe of oil, barely anything, and rub it in with a paper towel. This protects the seasoning between uses and keeps the surface ready to cook. That's the complete rule. Hot pan, cold water never. Cool pan, warm water always. No soap on seasoned surfaces. Dry immediately. One thin wipe of oil before storing. Every time without exception. I haven't bought a new pan in 14 years because of that routine, and everything Opal taught me behind it. I'm not telling you these pans look showroom perfect. They're dark with seasoning. The cast iron is almost black. The stainless steel has some heat discoloration around the rim from years of high heat cooking. They look well used because they are well used, but they cook. They cook every single day without sticking, without warping, without failing me or my family. The store wants you to keep buying. My mother-in-law Opal used to say, "Waste nothing, want nothing." After 14 years of following her advice in this kitchen, I believe every word of it. Your pans are probably not broken. You just haven't learned how to take care of them yet, and now you have. Start with the baking soda and vinegar reset if your stainless steel has gone dull and tacky. Reseason the cast iron if it's developed rust or started sticking badly. Stop using metal utensils in high heat on your nonstick pans. Let your pans cool before you clean them. Dry them the moment you rinse them, and oil the seasoned ones before they go back in the cabinet. Do those things consistently, and your pans will last far longer than any package suggests. Maybe longer than you expect. Maybe long enough to hand them to someone else the way Opal handed them to me. That's the honest truth from 14 years in this kitchen. No products to buy, no tricks, no shortcuts, just what Opal showed me and what the cooking science backs up every single time.